The conversation now will center on the hike in electricity tariff in Nigeria. So many electricity consumers have been complaining about the recent hike in electricity price. So the federal government is saying that it has planned to move Nigerians, all of them, to Band A. So when some Nigerians were asking why has electricity tariff in their area or where they live have been increased? So DISCOs had to come up with explanation of how the bands are shared or categorized. You have different bands, and so there's a certain tariff allocated to each band. You have band A, B, C, D, and E. A seems to be the top among them, depending on the number of hours that they consume. That's what a band is categorized by, the number of hours that they enjoy electricity for. Now, the federal government says it has planned to move all Nigerians to Band A, which means that all Nigerians begin to enjoy more hours of electricity within a 3-year period. But what would be the cost implication of this, and how is it going to happen? We have joining us via Zoom Ambassador Obuesi Philip, who is President, CEO, Statewide Waste and Environment Education Foundation, SOUQ Foundation. Good morning, welcome to Early Exchange.
Very good morning to you. I'm happy to be here.
All right, thank you for joining us. So let's look at electricity. Energy is needed for production, is needed for daily living. Now the tariff have been increased across board, not really across board, but for some bands in Nigeria. What are your take on the electricity tariff hike and also the power that is made available to the consumers?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here. And to give my take on the present hike on electricity tariff across the country, especially for some bands, as they say. I'll start by saying that it is quite unfortunate that the way our country is being run, many times one is not very certain of governmental policies and policy direction. Sincerely, I am at a loss as to, especially between NNPC and PHCN. Sometimes I don't know to what level the government still has interest in these businesses. I'm confused. I try to keep tab with the level of government's ownership and government's interference and government's involvement with PHCN, and so it makes it difficult for one to make appropriate commentaries with respect to this, because you don't know whether they are still government corporations, whether they are no longer government corporations, whether it's just government cannot release and still have a tete-a-tete to the different streams of these corporations. So I think that is where the problem lies. The PHCN has grossly underperformed. And I say this with pain because I'm one of the customers that applied for their prepaid meters for some time now. And I have followed up with it. And the stories are just too many. Government is not approving the new this thing. Government is doing this. And the stories are just too many. And you don't know where to hold onto it. So, for me, the new tariff increase is so uncalled for. Why do I say that it is so uncalled for? It is performance that should drive this increase, whether for NNPC, whether for petroleum, for anything, any service whatsoever. It is performance that should drive increase in price. But what we see here in Nigeria is that the poorer the performance, the more increase, and with vote face, with arrogance, with sheer arrogance, the poorer the performance, the worse the performance, the more the increase. I think poor performance drives increase in prices in Nigeria, and there is no hope for the people. There is no remedy. You can't remedy it. Go to anywhere. They have so many customers that even if you decide to leave, it doesn't matter. That is because of our large population. So I feel that this increase is so uncalled for. It is not driven by availability of electricity. Month in, month out, you hear there's going to be an increase, there's an increase, month in, month out. Not that they have done anything with the last increase. Nothing tangible is on the ground based on the last increase, and there is another increase, and there is going to be another increase, and there will be another increase, just like in the fuel sector. So it's quite unfortunate. My take on it is that it's quite unnecessary and uncalled for. Thank you.
All right, Ambassador, glad to see you once again. What do you make of this argument on the part of the Minister of Power that the initial increase is going to affect just a segment of the consumers, about 1.5 million, according to the minister, which is those who belong to the Band A category? Now, do you see this to be valid, and how do you think this should have been approached differently now that Nigerians are reacting negatively to this development?
I listened to the minister. Again, the arrogance of those in power. The arrogance of those in power. And I have seen governments over the years, I'm over 50 years old. I've seen government over the years deliberately tell lies just to allow the policy to pass. When the policy passes, everything will remain as normal. Nothing is going to change. Nothing is going to change. Government is not interested in performance, in delivering quality service delivery to the people. Government is not interested in that. They are not interested in causing any measurable, tangible change from what the situation was before they came in. No, you're not going to see any tangible change because this minister said that. Ministers in time past have said things like that just to push the policy through. And once the policy is pushed through, everything remains normal. So I don't reckon with it. In fact, I've stopped commenting on public issues because it is a waste of time and resources and energy because the government is not interested in service delivery, in helping the people. It is good governance that should drive those things, not subsequent each and every government, each and every minister, each and every commissioner coming up with one noble idea, one idea or whatever, just to let it be said that things are happening. Not because that thing is going to have any positive impact on the lives of the people. Meanwhile, we know globally that the welfare of the people and the security of the people is the number one, should be the number one priority of government. But with our government, not with this particular government, not with this government particularly, but with all of them, this one inclusive, all of them without exception, the people are not prioritized. So I do not reckon again with what the minister was saying. I heard him talking about people leaving electricity. Look, let me deliver on this first. First things first. Let's see the electricity. Let's have the electricity. People are going through emotional trauma. Challenges are facing the citizens on a daily basis. And government, only what we hear are rhetorics, like the minister just made. And I tell you with all sincerity, that statement was made just to push through the policy. You can come back to me another 3, 4, 5, 6 months. It will still be the same thing. It is the same thing happening in the security sector. It is happening in the oil and gas sector. It is happening in the electricity power sector. Just push through the policy and let it pass. Once it passes, everything is the same thing. Yeah.
All right, let's look at the reason behind the increase. So according to the Minister of Power, now the increase of tariff for Band A customers, which are referred to as the premium customers, from 68 naira to 225 naira per kilowatt. So it's the first step in government's move to remove subsidy from power. And the argument went forward to say that those in Band A would actually be saving more than they would have spent if they were to alternate power from the national grid with generators and maybe other source of power. What is your take on this? Do you think that the Band A customers, even with the new tariff, are actually enjoying the power that they pay for?
You see, like I have mentioned earlier, you have a policy, you want to come up with a policy of a subsidy removal, and the first thing to do is to increase. Oh, I asked myself, what does government benefit from the suffering of the people? Is there a special enjoyment that comes by reason of the government visiting suffering and hardship on the people? Is there a special benefit? Yet governments allow loopholes in their budgeting, in their policies, in everything. People, the citizens, let me not say people, let's call them the citizens, so that they can come under the auspices of the Constitution. The citizens are daily scammed. Government allow investors to scam the people. That is what's happening. That excuse of the Ministry of Power is lame. It needs a walking stick. It is incapacitated. It is a lame excuse. And because in Nigeria we have no capacity to challenge them, if you try to challenge them, you see how lengthy the process will be. That challenge will remain there until they are done with the 4 years or the 8 years or how long the president allows them to remain in office. So it's of no use. And that is why they continue to give lame excuses. What subsidy removal? Haven't we seen what the subsidy removal? So I think that those of you that work in media houses should be more courageous in when you interface with these public officers. Should be more courageous in interfacing with them, since we do not have access to interface with them. What excuses is that? Will I allow the manager in my firm, in my business, to give me that kind of excuse? You want to remove subsidy. Why not let performance drive that? Why not let the availability of the commodities drive that? Availability of the commodities, let it drive that. Then let us see what we will be missing if we don't pay more. And every government policy is directed at price increase. Look, this is to the government and those people who occupy one position, whether appointed or elected. The same energy you use to come up with policies that cause hardship on the people is the same energy you will use to come up with policies that will be favorable to the people. Why spend time concocting negative policies? Why? I mean, to the government, the elected and the appointed. Why spend energy developing? If you give better thoughts to these ideas, you will see the positive ones, the ones that you will get positive ideas on how to advance the cause of the country and make the people happy for once as citizens. For once as citizens. Each person that enters any governmental office in Nigeria, the first thing he's thinking about is how to increase one price or the other and visit hardship on the people. Of what benefit is it that somebody is a citizen of a country? I just returned from the United States. At every level, you see a benefit for somebody, not just for the United States citizens, for people who live there. But here, I think the excuse is not sitting very well with me, and I'm not comfortable with it. You can't get the meter. The increased power, the tariff, There is no meter. I have applied for one since last year. And they are turning me about, and there is no remedy. It does not sit well with me. And it's quite unfortunate, but that is what it is. We are in Nigeria.
Let's look at the business side to this development. Now that the implication of this will be the increase from 66 naira, the tariff from 66 naira to 225 naira per kilowatt. Now, what will be the implication of these businesses, especially small businesses in Nigeria?
The implication is dire. I run a small business here in Surulere, Lagos. And I pay as much. They simply refuse to give me a meter. So I pay as much as 90,000, 100,000, 120,000 monthly. The least I have paid is 75,000 for a small business. I will pay less if I get metered. So the implication is very, because they tell us that in my area, the reason why we are paying much is because we are in Band C, or is it Band B or Band C? Definitely not Band A. What you pay, you don't get to see the light. And I don't understand our government. Every country is driven by small businesses. The Dangotes and the big banks, they have their place in the development of a nation. But a country that kills small businesses through policies, I can't see hope for that country if on daily basis our government continue to churn out policies that negatively affect small businesses. So how are you going to create employment? If the small businesses are run out of business, government officials every day loiter the streets, victimizing small businesses. PSCN officials every day loiter the streets, victimizing small business owners. Local government officials parading the street on daily basis, victimizing and intimidating small business owners. Then government itself coming up with multiple taxation from every area. Those still doing small businesses in Nigeria is just because, there's this adage that says we lean on our knees because there is no other place to lean on. It is not because, it's just that you can't just sit down at home doing nothing. But as for the government, this over 300% increase in tariff, when we know that the service will not be rendered, when we know that meters will not be available, why not first of all let them make sure by government policy, make sure that everyone is metered? They will make more money if more people are metered. A large quantum of Nigerians are not metered. So it's the same thing happening in the tax, this thing. Instead of making sure that everybody is brought into the tax net, government will prefer to visit the tax liability of the whole nation on the few who pays tax. That is laziness in governance. And that is what is happening in the power sector. Only few people paying for the light burden or power burden of the whole nation. Because the operators, the government and the officials are lazy. You go to the office to see them, they are in meetings. Those meetings yield nothing. So long as the people still suffer hardship all around, you get to the banking sector, your citizens are suffering hardship. You get to the filling stations, your people are suffering hardship. You get to the police station, your people are suffering hardship. You get to NEPA, what do you call it, PSCNs, your people are suffering hardship. And there is a government in place. This government inclusive, past governments all included. And each time you have opportunity to come up with policy, the policy is price increase. I think our leaders should cover themselves in shame. They do not know what they do not know the offices they occupy, what they should be doing. I can't be a father if at every point in time I am with a whip descending on my children. At every point in time, not for once do I show them, take them to amusement park, take them to ShopRite, take them to wherever, and give them the benefit of fatherhood. Each time they see me, I'm with a whip. Each time I come back from work, I'm with a whip. And the children will run helter-skelter, the family will be crying. Is that a father? Is that what fatherhood should be? Is that what leadership should be? Thank you.
That the governor seems to be like a father with a whip. Now, the removal of subsidy from electricity may look that way, but the government says that the removal of subsidy, which it has started, will save the country about 1.4 trillion naira regarding what he had targeted or budgeted to spend for subsidy of electricity. Now, you are someone who's into waste and environmental education. Aside the national grid, are there other sources of energy that should be explored with the savings from the removal of subsidy from electricity? 1.4 trillion naira already is said to be saved or will be saved from the recent hike in electricity tariff.
Government is lying to us. Each time this statement is made, nothing is saved. Or if funds are saved by reason of the tariff increase, by the reason of the subsidy removal, the officials steal them. Because I have never seen, not even in this petroleum, the subsidy removal in the petroleum this thing, have I read the report, have I seen the report where it is said that because subsidy was removed, we have gained this money and this is what we are doing with it. So when government said that money will be saved and they are rhetoric, like I have said earlier, to push through a policy. Just a statement being made to push through a policy. If money indeed will be saved from subsidy removal, from tariff increase, what is it being used for? Why can't they understand? Let government mobilize the people. Let us get this country going. With electricity, men and women will go out there and make a living for themselves without depending on the government. But no, government at every point in time, every 3 months, every 6 months, every subsequent government will come and tell us that there's going to be a tariff increase, that we'll do this. Look, let me tell you, in my current business, I depend entirely on PSCN. When there is no light, we pack up. We just sit down idle. No work. Because the alternative is to depend on diesel. And diesel, from when I started this business, was selling for 180 naira or something, 185 naira. At the last count, it is selling for 1,550 naira. And it is not even available. Then every day we are moving with jerrycan, scavenging for diesel. Our government does not have conscience. Those in leadership positions do not have conscience. So I do not believe government when they say so, that money will be saved from this and there won't be any need to depend on alternative energy. When we know the percentage of electricity power that is generated vis-a-vis the power that is transmitted because of bad infrastructure, and government talks to people and they think that the people are daft. The people are not daft. Before the emergence of social media, yes, we all depend on traditional media. So when government says anything, there's no way to challenge it. Now we have opportunity to know that what government is saying most likely is not true. So I do not depend on alternative. When there is no electricity, we sit down. It is all of us losing. It is all of us losing. It is the country losing. When you have a retinue of young energy sitting idle, see men and women on the streets. People make the streets their offices. Fellow citizens, just to earn a living, come on to troop into the streets and make business out of the street by victimizing citizens. And nothing can be done. And there is a government in place. So I do not believe the government. All that is necessary is for the government to show good faith, show goodwill, by first of all performing, getting the investors in the PACN sector to perform. When they do, then they can announce an increase. If not, let them continue doing it the way they are doing it. We are all here together, the country, we are here. We're not going to run away. It's our country. We'll continue to work to make it better.
Now let's talk about the collapse of the national grid. According to the International Energy Agency, the national grid has collapsed in the last 6 years for 46 times. Now, what do you think is likely responsible for this perpetual collapse of the national grid, and what can be done to address this? Talk about the transmission line and alternatives that can be deployed into these when it comes to technology.
Thank you very much. Over 40 times, the national grid has collapsed. And the government has not deemed it necessary to focus its attention to address that challenge. The only thing they do when they come to the office in the morning is to generate ideas on how to increase tariff. Do you know what it does to the psyche of the people to know that in their country, it is a regular thing for the national grid to collapse? And our government does not feel ashamed or insulted that an infrastructure as important, as fundamental as the national grid collapses so often, to the shame of the country and the leaders. And all they can talk about, all they can discuss is tariff increase. I think the challenge is having
to butt in, but what I'm asking is for you to provide solutions to this problem. We understand the angle you're coming from, but let our conversation be solution driven. Now, the collapse of the national grid, I would like you to focus on what should be the solutions, the alternatives, especially correcting the transmission line, which is the critical area when it comes to the issue of the national grid.
Definitely, I'll talk about the solution. But do you even think that what solution we discuss here will matter anything to these people in positions of leadership? But for you to talk about the solution, you have to talk about the problem. The government needs to know that we are no longer at ease with their lack of performance in office. Talking about solution, government must make sure, that is the starting point, that budgetary provisions for maintenance, first of all, is strictly adhered to and implemented. Because that is where it starts from. When there is infrastructure development, or for the maintenance of public infrastructure, if it is inadequately provided for or stolen when provided for, then they cannot maintain it. So number one, the government must make sure that if no other part of the budget performs, that this portion of the budget must perform. And again, government institutions of oversight, including the National Assembly, must make sure that if there is a provision, for example, in 2024 budget, for the maintenance of the power infrastructure, of the network of power infrastructure, they don't leave that to political contractors. They must make sure that whatever contractor is contracted to execute such projects, that contractor, in fact and indeed, executes that maintenance project. It is the lack of maintenance over the years, despite budgetary provisions, that has resulted in this incessant collapse of the national grid. So the solution: make adequate budgetary provision, ensure that when funds are provided, that those funds are in fact and indeed utilized. It will not be enough to say that funds have been marked for this project and there is no oversight to ensure that those projects are carried out. And finally, where a contractor or an agency or an institution is in charge of maintenance of our network of power infrastructures, and that power and that network fails, there are people in positions who should be queried, who should lose their job, who should suffer as a result of that. When a country does not punish infractions, when we as a people can jeopardize our national interest because of our personal interests, when we sabotage national interest and don't get paid, there is no repercussion. I have many instances. So I have given you 3 solutions. Government must make sure, and not just government, the media, the civil society, all agencies necessary, especially the oversight agencies, must make sure that funds are budgeted. And we must also make sure, number 2, that when budgeted for, that the funds are utilized for that purpose. Maintenance actually, in fact and indeed, carried out. Then 3, if there is a lack of performance along the way across the value chain, there should be punishment. But here, for all the collapses we have witnessed in the past, nobody loses his job. Everything continues as normal. And when the person retires, the person receive all kinds of accolades as a former NEPA, PHCN, this, former this or former that. The person gets a higher appointment. That is why the national grid will continue to collapse. But God forbid that continues to happen, because I believe
in order for the national grid not to continue to collapse, there is the need for an energy mix. Now, like I asked earlier, you are into waste management education. Now, what other kind of energy can private investors put their money in, put their expertise in, to take the pressure off the national grid and to create an energy mix that will make sure that energy is available to all Nigerians? What would you advise?
I will advise strong investment, not government investment, private investment in alternative means of energy power, especially solar, because we are in this region where there is abundance of sunlight. There should be increased investment in solar. And possibly, yes, there are other vesting, but I think solar is the main thing that can generate strong electricity for household domestic use for Nigerians. And I think Nigerians are beginning to invest in solar. Some of us are now depending on solar and inverter for electricity supply. It's just that for our businesses, for now, the level of solar availability, solar power availability from solar cannot power machineries. If not, a whole lot of people would have started divesting from the national grid for their machineries. But power from solar, we still have some limitations at this level in Nigeria. So a lot of people already investing in solar as a result of the failure from the national grid. So I think more people should make that investment, especially those with sufficient financial resources to make such investment in solar as an alternative energy. But for the government, they should be looking at the possibility of a nuclear plant. With over 200 million people, power from Kayanji Dam and so on can no longer sustain us at this level. Government should be talking about possible introduction of a nuclear plants in Nigeria to power our electricity, because the Kayanji dams and the marine environment can no longer provide, especially where the water bodies from Nigeria come from outside Nigeria, and so we can no longer entirely depend on that. Government has to make that investment with respect to nuclear energy, while the private sector concentrates on tapping from solar, from wind. The technology for wind energy is not so developed in Nigeria, but it can still give us some little. For those of us in the waste sector, I have been in meetings where the issue of biofuel, fuel from concentrated regions of, waste dumps and landfills and what do you call it, dump sites, where if they have lasted for a long time, you see them generating methane gas, and there have been discussions. There's been discussions to tap into biofuel as a source of energy, but I don't see that giving us sufficient firepower in terms of power generation. I think what we have to depend on so much for now is solar energy, and a whole lot of families are depending on that. But I will encourage the government to start to look critically and fundamentally at nuclear power, because that is what is happening globally. That's the only way you can give power to a large proportion of your population. So talking about power mix, I think I'll be suggesting to the government nuclear power, and I'll be suggesting to the private sector solar power. Yep.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Obuesi Philip, for being with us today on the show. We value your contributions, and we know that you're angry as a power consumer, but we can only be hopeful, and it is not good for us to lose hope. Things have changed with continuous talking, continuous push. Let's be optimistic.
Yeah, here we're going to make our country great by the special grace of God.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.